Hello, friends. It's such a joy to be part of this day of celebrating the 75th anniversary of the publishing of Paramhansa Yogananda's great spiritual masterpiece, Autobiography of a Yogi. As we said 75 years ago, December 1946. And interestingly, many of the founding members of Ananda were also born in that month. I myself was, December 1946. And it's as though Master's book, Autobiography, sent out a great soul call to his children everywhere and said, now is the time to incarnate. I'm going to need all the devotees to come and launch this great movement of enlightenment. Many speakers have spoken already throughout the day. Now we come to the last chapters of Autobiography, in which he really makes it clear that this book is more than a printed words on a printed page. It is the launching of a great movement of enlightenment, and really to bring new perspective, but more than that, the tools, the attitudes, the techniques of meditation and Kriya Yoga that will transform human consciousness now and far into the future. He was a great visionary. He and our line of gurus, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Master, they have come again and again throughout history to help mankind move forward. And they came at this time now where mankind is making a transition from chaos and economic, political turmoil, the First World War, Second World War, depression, Cold War, pandemics, all these things that have been afflicting mankind. Yogananda and our great line of gurus came to launch, and Autobiography was one of the carrier waves, because Yogananda knew being in a physical body, there were only so many people he could reach on a personal level. But his legacy was the autobiography. And as I say, more than just words on printed pages, it was a carrier wave and a magnetic attraction to all the things that he knew would be the hope for humanity. He talked in these last chapters about communities. He called them world brotherhood colonies, and how this would enable humanity to get away from the intensity of cities and political and national identities, but to live simply in attunement with nature, where everyone around you shared the same high aspiration. And we see this vision being manifested throughout the Ananda communities worldwide. Ananda Village celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2019 and going strong. And there are communities throughout America, Europe, India. And so we see this vision of communities has taken root, even though it didn't happen in his lifetime, but he planted the seeds at the end of Autobiography of a Yogi. And his great disciple, our teacher, lifelong teacher, Swami Kriyananda, he heard that message. He took up that mission, and through him, all these communities have started, bringing enlightenment and meaning and joy into the lives, not only of those who live here, but of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world who know of Ananda and are affiliated with it. In these last chapters, he also refers again to Kriya Yoga. It's a reference throughout the autobiography in a special chapter. One of our speakers has already talked on it, but he refers to it. He spoke in the last few pages, he spoke of sitting with Dr. Lewis, who he called his first Kriya Yogi in America, in the West. And speaking of world brotherhood colonies, the two were linked, because to really live in an expansive way, in a selfless way, harmonious, unified, we need techniques like Kriya Yoga to help us to transcend the ego, to raise our consciousness and move towards spiritual expansion and freedom. And then he also spoke towards the end of hope, of the world. When he wrote it, it was just coming out of the end of World War II. The first atomic bomb had been dropped. It was a time, in a sense, when the world was holding its breath. Are we finished with war? Are we finished with global destruction? Or will this carry forward, and will we annihilate ourselves out of delusion, out of seeing each other as separate and inimical to ourselves? And he was saying this doesn't have to be a message of hope through the different attitudes and through communities and Kriya Yoga that he brought. And he said, I see my Kriya Yogis like shining points of light scattered all over the earth. And that's what has helped humanity. I say this without any sense of self-importance, because I am less than a grain of sand in the movement that the great ocean of cosmic consciousness, the great wave that Master brought to enliven humanity. But those of us who are practicing his techniques, who are living Kriya Yoga in our daily life and practicing it in meditation, we are sparks of his light that are helping to bring humanity to a new level of harmony and peace. Swami Kriyananda wrote a beautiful book called Hope for a Better World. It's a beautiful book, and I recommend it, available through our publishers, Crystal Clarity. But he speaks of the community's movement and of meditation and all the things that Master brought. And this is really the hope for humanity. It's a message that we do not have to be bound by the past. We do not have to be bound by past prejudice and of every kind, political, racial, religious, things that are affecting us more adversely than any pandemic ever could, that there is hope and that these great masters come. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, when darkness predominates and light is diminished, Krishna says, Krishna, who is one of our gurus, Babaji, I will incarnate again and again, taking visible form to reestablish virtue and destroy evil. We need to understand the importance of the advent of these great masters, these great avatars, divine incarnations. And that autobiography of a yogi is this great carrier wave for the message and the spiritual power that they brought. Someone recently sent to me a poster from an old relic, a poster from a talk that Master Paramhansa Yogananda gave on November 9th, 1926. So almost 100 years ago. In Cincinnati, Ohio. He arrived in the West in 1920, and for the first 10 years of his life, unrelenting, he called them his spiritual campaigns. He traveled back and forth across America, lecturing in dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of different cities, to all sorts of clubs and audiences and auditoriums, big and small. It was not an easy task. But then towards the end of his life, he settled at his headquarters in California and wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. But in this talk that he gave in 1926, it was called How to Live Several Hundred Years in Advance of Your Own Times. Marvelous. He lived not several hundred years in advance of his own times. He lived in all times, past, present, future. He knew where humanity was heading. He could see the pitfalls and the opportunities. An Autobiography of a Yogi is a great carrier wave to help us move into a better world, to give us hope for a better world. And so, my friends, as we celebrate the great advent of this seemingly simple book, let us live with awareness of the great gift and the great blessing that Paramhansa Yogananda and our line of gurus brought to the world. And may we live so that we too may be carrier waves of hope and peace, harmony and joy throughout the world. God bless you.